The year is 1974. The world of music is changing as new forms of technology are being introduced. Many iconic artists and bands release innovative albums. An album release that gained worldwide acclaim is the album Autobahn by Kraftwerk. Their fourth studio album led electronic music into the limelight for the foreseeable future. Still, one of their most popular songs, I'd like to discuss what I believe could be their contender for the best album and song. Today, I'd like to review what I consider to be the sequel to Autobahn. As a quick synopsis for those who are not familiar with the band, Kraftwerk is a German band formed in Dusseldorf in 1970 by Ralf Hutter and Florian Schneider. They are considered innovators and pioneers of electronic music. Kraftwerk was one of the first successful acts to popularize the genre. Kraftwerk developed a self-described experimental robot pop style that combined electronic music with pop melodies, sparse arrangements, and repetitive rhythms. They are renowned for their stylized presence of matching suits and artistic theme. The band's work has influenced a diverse range of artists from multiple genres of modern music. Many of their popular hits include Autobahn, The Robots, The Model, Computer Love, Pocket Calculator, Numbers, and much more. The name Kraftwerk is Deutsch or German for power plant. They chose the name due to their studio space resembling the interior of a power plant after collecting gear and technology. For the rest of the video, I will continue pronouncing their name Kraftwerk as Kraftwerk, the typical English pronunciation. In 1976, Kraftwerk had released 5 studio albums, with 2 of them gaining international praise. A year prior, the band released their 5th studio album, Radioaktivität, or Radioactivity. The album had dual meanings between the themes of radioactivity pertaining to radiation and radioactivity pertaining to radio frequencies. Radioactivity received mixed reviews as the band's first entirely electronic album. Despite the initial feedback, many to this day claim the album as being their favorite from the band. But at this time, Kraftwerk began recording a new album. This album shifted their focus from technology being the central theme like with Radioactivity, and instead returned to the idyllic theme of transportation, revolving around the themes of Europe and the International Railway. The album released in 1977 under the name Trans-Europa Express, or Trans-Europe Express. It was released in German and English, just like Radioactivity. Trans-Europe Express received positive reviews and gained a huge following within pop and R&B music. Many musicians over the years such as Run DMC, Madonna, Afrika Bambaataa, Joy Division, and Susie and the Banshees were influenced by the album. Afrika Bambaataa's song Planet Rock used Trans-Europe Express's melody and the drums from Kraftwerk's song Numbers. Dr. Dre used the main melody of Trans-Europe Express for the intro of his song Under Pressure, and Run DMC sampled the orchestron violins from Trans-Europe Express in their song It's Like That. The album gained much publicity, and its fame has grown significantly over the years. David Bowie and Iggy Pop are both referenced within the album's title track, as Kraftwerk was influenced by David Bowie's song Station to Station. So with that said, let's listen to the album. The official playlist is listed within the description below, if you'd like to follow along. A distant, plucky synth introduces the album, sounding much more like a distant memory of the past. While a cheery, optimistic motif plays, conveying an endless and spacious presence. The simple sequence plays until a low synth bass slowly comes into the song. The bass acting as more of an ambient hum similar to a soft cello, until a lo-fi choir sings the main melody of the song. choir sounding distant grows into a powerful choral element as a synth bass kicks in to give the song a rhythm. The drums and the synth lead introduce the main verse. The song encapsulates the joyful optimism of traveling. Having a break after the main chorus to introduce the changes in the listener's journey, the song is using a minimalistic approach to create a joyful pop track, having lyrics such as parks, hotels, and palaces, highlighting the themes of travel in Europe.
Parks, hotels, and palaces,
Other lyrics like promenades and avenues, real life and postcard views. The chorus and main verse cuts in the middle of the song to a warm synth solo, having the orchestron's choir backing up the synth solo as it leads the listener forward. Every note change and modulation added to the solo pushes the theme to the forefront. This part of the song I always envision the amazing mountains, exquisite architecture, and dreamlike landscapes. The melodic elements of the solo fill the track with an eternal yearning for a trek of the continent. The song arrives back to the main chorus repeating the phrase, "Europe endless." Many elements of this track are enchanting and uplifting to the viewer, as Kraftwerk masterfully use their synthesizers to craft a picturesque view of their homeland, presenting the listener with a perfectly composed soundscape as the exposition to the album. And as the song concludes with one final synth solo, the track fades into silence. Echoing chirps hypnotize the listener as the rising sequential melody plays for the next track. The delays and reverberations give the sound a disjointed and spacious presence. The notes chosen for the sequence create a sense of discomfort due to the rising melodic structure. As a distant snare drum hits to give the song a standard rhythm, the extreme use of delay on the drums give it a very disconnected presence, reminiscent of a dark cave or an empty building. As the bass line adds weight to the song following the drums. Cuts through the background sequence as it presents a distinct, dire tone to the song. The track takes elements from their earlier days within the krautrock scene, where they embraced aspects of experimental music. In this case, the song definitely took inspiration from their earlier tracks, like Mitternacht.
The young man stepped into the Hall of Mirrors, where he discovered a reflection of himself.
Ralph sings about a young man making an introspective journey as the main chorus chants,
Discover themselves in the looking glass, even the greatest stars. Discover themselves in the looking glass.
Even the greatest stars discover themselves in the looking glass. The song presents the listener with darker feelings of one's self-view. The mix of this track is balanced very well. Ralph's vocals sit perfectly in the mix, while the other elements complement each other so well. Kraftwerk's music is known for being mixed and mastered with precision. As a side note, I love hearing the smaller fragments and pieces in the song change, like the sequence in the background shifting downward gives a very disorienting presence. The song continues building the story of discovery, where each chorus changes the young man's journey. Even the greatest stars discover, dislike, change, and live their lives in the looking glass. Reflecting on their feelings of fame, narcissism, and their self-image. In the middle of the song, a disjointed solo overwhelms the mix. Sound bounces between 4 or 5 notes shifting back and forth, parallel to the character's internal conflict during their journey.
The artist is living in the mirror with the echoes of himself.
Ralph concludes the track with more pessimistic or realistic lyrics depending on how the listener chooses to see it. The artist is living in the mirror with echoes of himself. The song ends with the chorus, "Even the greatest stars fix their face in the looking glass." My perspective of the song is that it delves into the deeper roots of the psyche, whether it is one's own view of themselves or the discovery of their dependence on their own self-view. It is left to the listener to decipher what the song means to them, or how they perceive it. I love this track. The depth that Kraftwerk expressed through the lyrics of this song are profound, showcasing their strong connection to the experimental and ambient themes musically that they retained from their earlier albums. Ralph opens this song with a classic 4/4 count-in.
1, 2, 3, 4.
As a catchy melodic lead follows the heavy drum beat. With a flanger bass bouncing back and forth, the orchestron choir returns to lend a darker choir tone to the song.
We are showroom dummies. We are showroom dummies.
Kraftwerk chose to make a song based on comments that critics made, comparing the band to mannequins due to how they had minimal activity while on stage. Kraftwerk chose to embrace this theme, making a synth-pop track out of it. The song's lyrics do not contain a great amount of depth, but describe mannequins coming alive, breaking through the glass of a store window that they're standing in, and going to a club to dance.
We start to move, and we break the glass. We are showroom dummies. We are showroom dummies.
It's a fantastic song despite the various interpretations it has. It's Kraftwerk at their peak, in my opinion. The song is more of a mainstream pop song rather than the previous tracks, but the instrumentation still works very well and fits pretty good in the mix. The bass, drums, and all of the elements work well as an overall mix. The song in the middle splits with the melodic phrasing shifting by several notes before bringing in a solo. The solo sweeps side to side with various notes to complement the mannequin's journey to the discotheque. Some have stated the song is also the band reflecting on the reality of their performances. While they are performing, they are showroom dummies, mannequins on display. Afterwards, when they break the glass, it is the end of their shows. And to conclude the night's performance, they go to a club to dance and have fun, no longer showroom dummies.
We go into a club, and there we start to dance. We are showroom dummies. We are showroom dummies.
So if that is the case, I think the simple or strange lyrics can be interpreted in a variety of ways. Regardless of how you may hear it, I think it's more of a positive message or having fun and being yourself. Because maybe all of us have our moments where we are showroom dummies. Flipping the album over to the second side of the LP opens with one of the most iconic chord progressions of all time. The lo-fi violins introduce the main melody, lifting the audience higher and higher with the melodic ascension. One of the most influential chord progressions in music history, Trans-Europe Express takes the listener on a journey. The strings appear throughout the song, where Kraftwerk experiments with the Doppler effect, which is when an object, or a vehicle in this case, passes you, and the sound it is making changes in volume and pitch. The farther the sound moves away from you, the pitch changes along with the amplitude. The break cuts through the mix with another melody following the trance theme. Before Ralph sings the lyrics for the track.
Rendezvous on Champs-Élysées. Leave Paris in the morning with T-E-E.
The chorus rises in a psychedelic style, where the listener is stuck within a trance-like state.
Europe Express. Trans Europe Express. Trans Europe Express.
The track is a great example of proper mixing, as all of the instruments and sounds are well balanced. The lyrics add a romanticized undertone with the theme of travel, similar to Europe Endless. This time, rather than it being about Europe's grandiose views and luxuries, it is centered around traveling via train, specifically the Trans-Europe Express. The flanger hats shuffling the drums through the song works so perfectly. Every instrument in the track works in perfect harmony, including their equalization and their effects. Everything has such a vibrant tonal quality that makes everything sound very unique. It is, in my opinion, a masterclass on balancing your frequencies and mastering your music.
From station to station, back to Düsseldorf city. Meet Iggy Pop and David Bowie.
The lyrics include famous musicians Iggy Pop and David Bowie, as Kraftwerk were fans of their music. Ralph specifically included both as he was interested in Bowie's work, and Bowie had been working with Iggy Pop of the Stooges, which was one of Ralph's favorite bands. The song transitions into the second phase of the suite. The flanged hi-hats with the kick and snare cycle the listener through the second track, before another Doppler sweep from the orchestron violins lead in the percussion. Reverberated percussive hits, pan to the left and the right, bang back and forth, with a low bass drum to the left and a higher pitched cymbal to the right. They may have used a regular acoustic drum kit with it being heavily modified, or they could have used other objects to create the percussion. The sound is meant to recreate the metallic rhythm of a train on the tracks while in transit. It continues with a metallic shifting sound similar to a slot machine. Until the strings return, sweeping the listener up in a thunderous hum as the ambient sweep transitions the suite into its final phase. A sharp percussive sequence fills the soundscape as the familiar orchestron strings return. The rhythm guiding the listener along as the train is approaching its destination. Florian adds a vocoded chorus to the outro to back up Ralph's vocals. The concluding chorus follows the train's mechanical rhythm. The strings add variations of melodic motifs, elevating the song to its climax. The instrumentation for Abzug builds off of the simple structure while adding an almost cinematic conclusion to the album, with the chorus repeating the phrase Trans-Europe Express, propelling the listener further and further towards the finish line.
Express, Trans-Europe Express, Trans-Europe Express.
It's easily one of Kraftwerk's best choruses out of any of their songs, due to the rhythm, instrumental harmony with the vocals, and its overall simplicity. Finally, the constant build-up towards the end of the song is released, with the chord progression concluding the song this time, and the train stopping at the station, bringing the audience to their destination.
Trans-Europe Express, Trans-Europe Express.
After several seconds of silence, a distant plucky synth can be heard. Echoing back and forth, mixed warmly in the soundscape of the track, dual orchestron violins return this time with a subtle instrumentation. Pan to the left and the right, almost mirroring each other in their amplitude and modulation. The heartwarming composition paying homage to the Austrian composer Franz Schubert is an emotive send-off to the listener. As if the audience has awakened from a dream that was so easy to see, yet is now so distant. Such an understated way to conclude an album, reflecting on the romanticized themes and elements. As the repeating vocal phrasing returns, echoing until the end. I'd like to reflect on several topics with this album, considering the various factors such as the demo versions of it, the technology, and other factors. I will discuss at the end my final thoughts on the album. In 1976, months before the release of the album, Kraftwerk performed several live shows where they performed earlier versions of some of the songs off the album. I will leave links to the concerts they had performed these demo versions in the description below. The band performed a very early version of Showroom Dummies in Paris. The song followed up to conclude the concert after they had played Mitternacht and Cristallo. The track included elements from Mitternacht, where the lead was pretty similar. This version of Showroom Dummies is much more of an improvisation and less of the pop song we get on the album, incorporating synth sound effects like the sounds in Mitternacht, but even improvising the radioactivity melody within the song at certain parts. The song was more similar to their earlier work on Autobahn or the earlier days of the band with improvisation and experimental roots. The other song they played live at this time was Europe Endless. They performed the track with two different sequences. Both had practically the same structure, but some differences between the sequence notes. For this version of the song, they still used the orchestra and choir on the song for the break, but Florian sung backing vocals live himself without the use of the vocoder that we get in the final version. Both versions followed the same song structure with a somewhat improvised solo in the middle of the song. The solo has some motifs that were kept in the final album. Something I find very interesting about the live demo versions are their use of doubling the main melody after the first verse. Ralf and Florian both mirror each other playing the main melody. It would have been interesting if they kept this concept in the album version, but I could see how the doubling may have been too strong in the mix, overwhelming the other elements. The final song from the album they performed live was Trans-Europe Express. This version of the song is pretty different from the final version. They introduced the track with just the chord progression in a different key, but my one comment about the progression is that it does not resolve. The chords contain more dissonance, where they don't conclude the phrasing and aren't a strong melody. But the ending of the first demo has the chord progression resolve the phrasing as with what we hear in the final album. The demo versions still contain the train rhythm as used in the final song, but they did not use the flanger effect to affect the pitch at all. However, they still use the same lyrics and vocals as the final version. The earlier demo version doesn't use a vocoder at all, but the second version has a vocoded intro. The demos do not have the percussion used in Metal on Metal, and the drums on them are much slower and not as energetic. Overall, it's interesting what could have been and what led to the creation of this amazing album. Kraftwerk always obtained new instruments for their studio that they felt were interesting, different, or usable. They always tried to be new and up to date, just like many people are currently with technology. I will place the link to a site that catalogs much of the band's previous gear: the Minimoog Model D, the Veco Orchestron, the ARP Odyssey, the Polymoog 203A, custom-built electronic drum pads that were used to trigger other synths, the Synthanorma SQ312 sequencer, the Vox Percussion King, Sennheiser VSM 201 vocoder, Eventide FL201 instant flanger, Roland RE201. Some of the gear the band was using for the time was experimental and revolutionary, such as the Veco Orchestron. The band liked the Mellotron, but the instrument was too expensive, so instead they purchased the Veco Orchestron and used its lo-fi sound in their music. Its iconic retro tone always gave Kraftwerk a unique, older presence to me. Other gear like the Synthanorma was a custom-built sequencer the band used extensively on the album, along with the FL201 instant flanger that the band used on Showroom Dummies' bass and Trans-Europe Express's hi-hats. The tech the band was using was innovative at the time. The album art for Trans-Europe Express has several different covers. The first cover of the album, the Deutsche cover, has a very simple layout with the quintessential group. Karl, Florian, and Wolfgang stand while Ralf is sitting in the front. This cover is my least favorite out of the 3 album covers. The layout seems more bland and unoriginal, lacking an element to make the album unique. Reviewing the previous album art pieces, the band improved their album art substantially by Autobahn. Autobahn and Radioactivity have much more of a classic presentation, where the album art represents the music well. From a photography standpoint, the lighting isn't very interesting with the standard overhead lights, and the background is pretty generic with the curtains. The top of Florian's head getting cut by the title design is not the best design choice, as it makes the imagery feel more crowded. Moving on to the second cover of the album. This is the international cover and possibly the more common cover art displayed. The album displays the 4 members standing close together facing different directions, with a sepia-toned background and more direct lighting. The title font still uses the same Futura font, except it is inverse this time, with white text on a black background. The cover art is also in color, compared to the previous image being in monochrome. This album art is better, but it could still be improved upon. The process for editing the photo is they took individual photos of the members, cut them out, and then placed them together on a different background. The problem that stands out to me is that their proportions are not correct. Wolfgang on the left and Ralph on the right are closer in proportion to each other, while Carl and Florian are larger in the photo. The proof is with Florian and Ralph. Comparing a photo of them side by side, and they are nearly the same height and build. Regardless, it is not my favorite of the album covers, but it works. The final cover art is the 2009 remaster of the album. The album art follows the minimalist style that Kraftwerk uses in their art and music, and the design is simple yet conveys a stronger theme than the previous covers. The image is the front of the Trans-Europa Express coming around a bend. The one thing that stands out is that the front window for the conductor is not present. Following the band's current usage of monochrome projections for the song fits a strong cohesive theme, where they use their name at the top and the album title to frame the imagery. I prefer this cover art due to it fitting the album's theme and the band's style the best. There are also some reiterations of the album's cover art for cassette. So one thing to add is that Kraftwerk at this point in time started recording some of their songs in multiple languages. The one song people know them for doing this the most with is Pocket Calculator, released in 1981. For Trans-Europe Express, they mainly recorded the album in English and Deutsch, except for one song. Showroom Dummies was released with some copies of the single on vinyl having a French version, with the B-side being Les Mannequins. I like this take on the song being in French. It's pretty interesting, and I think it's a pretty cool choice for Showroom Dummies to be the song that they chose. After Trans-Europe Express, Kraftwerk influenced countless fans and brought electronic genres to the forefront of mainstream music. Autobahn, without a doubt, is one of their most well-known songs, as it drew from their connection with technology, their European identity, and the modern world. Autobahn, Radioactivity, and their previous albums experimented with synthesis, and touched on subjects that were important to them. Autobahn's first half of the album was a 22-minute composition about Germany's iconic roadway, while the second half of the album experimented with synthesizers and acoustic instrumentation. With tracks such as Mitternacht and Morgenspaziergang, Radioactivity focused on the duality of radioactivity for music, news, and entertainment, while also delving into the secondary meaning of it pertaining to atomic radioactivity. Both albums contained elements of synth pop, while also being grounded in experimental music. The avant-garde nature of both albums are influential and innovative. But Trans-Europe Express used contemporary musical styles to create warm, happy, introspective, and nostalgic styles, embracing both their previous styles of experimental music while finding a new style within synth pop. I would like to quote the band in regards to Trans-Europe Express. Links to the interviews will be down below. Since we are the first post-war generation, we grew up in a cosmopolitan world. We live near the borders to Belgium, France, and Holland, and Switzerland. We learned several European languages, so we feel quite at home in these countries. Germany is surrounded by so many different countries which influence the country, so it is natural to feel pan-European. We're the first post-war generation born after the war, so we have seen destruction all around. And we come from a zero situation, and also culturally of course, because everything was destroyed and then imported with Anglo-American music, so we had to redefine our sound, and that's where we came with our Kling Klang studio. Finding our basic musical language, we developed a very European multilingual music. Like Trans-Europe Express was one of those compositions where Kraftwerk is like a music machine, or a man-machine with music, traveling through Europe, a cultural Europe I mean, beyond boundaries, and this musical language has been understood around the world. To me, I always find it interesting how the Beatles were playing with this Englishness. So they, like Sgt. Pepper, or all the English culture, they took and played with it. And Kraftwerk, not intentionally, they didn't want to copy the Beatles. They were very much into the German history. I didn't so much thought at the time we were living in a vacuum, a cultural vacuum, because of the Second World War. But Ralph and Florian did, and they wanted to close the gap to before the Second World War, to the artists and the music and the film of the Weimar Republic then. I titled this video as Kraftwerk's sequel to Autobahn. Kraftwerk's success from Autobahn is well known and discussed by many people, fans, and fellow musicians, but the album never had a clear successor to continue the themes presented. Europe Endless explores the lush pastures, high mountains, flowing rivers, and blue skies of Europe. The Hall of Mirror touches on the existentialism that was present within the art world at the time, with Kraftwerk's home being Dusseldorf, one of the most prominent areas for art in Deutschland at the time. Showroom Dummies, a pop track reflecting on the band's style as a precursor to their iconic track The Robots in 1978. Trans-Europe Express, the title track, is a three-part suite about one of the biggest modes of transportation in Europe, by train, and concluding the album with a track commemorating the classical Austrian musician Franz Schubert. Franz Schubert was renowned for his peaceful, soft, and understated music, where he left vast amounts of music behind after he passed, including 7 symphonies, over 600 vocal works, and a great amount of piano and chamber pieces. He passed away at only 31 years old. These themes fit within the overall idea of the album: travel, modern transportation, technology, art, and the romanticism of Europe. These are the central ideas behind much of Kraftwerk's music. Trans-Europe Express followed the idea of making the song much more of a trance-like experience, using their instruments, effects, and style to compose a song that checked all the boxes. I believe the album is without a doubt the sequel to Autobahn, where it succeeded in every way it could. Trans-Europe Express, Metal on Metal, and Abzug even follow a very similar structure, combined as one composition to Autobahn, where Autobahn as a 22-minute composition could be split into 3 or 4 longer songs. Trans-Europe Express, as one solid composition, follows a very similar structure, the beginning establishing the main motifs along with the song's core structure, the middle being an ambient split between sound effects and noise that relates to the method of travel, and the ending wrapping up the composition, reintroducing the central message and themes, while ending it all in a climactic way that closes with the journey ending with the chorus. Both compositions have a very similar structure, romanticize the experience of traveling via their method of transportation, and both have very similar soundscaping tropes while having very strong melodic structures. Both songs are excellent and are crowd favorites, but I can understand the different points as well, where Radioactivity is the next album after Autobahn. It also has experimental elements, along with unique soundscaping, but the album does not align with the central themes and songwriting compared to Trans-Europe Express in my opinion. I love all of Kraftwerk's albums, but based on these similarities, Trans-Europe Express is the sequel to Autobahn in my opinion. Trans-Europe Express is not an album with a complicated meaning. No, it is an album that captures the European wanderlust in a way that no other band, album, or group has to me. Where music or art is a product of people and their society, so we are very. The German word is Alltagsmusik. That's everyday music in the way of everyday culture. So it's about cars, computers, relations, media. We compose our everyday life experience. The various emotive undertones the album contains still connects with new listeners to this day, as it takes the audience on a soundscaping journey that is difficult to fully express and articulate. It is easily one of my favorite Kraftwerk albums, but Trans Europe Express is its own unique album. It conveys adventurous wanderlust, artistic harmony, and musical dreams. Thank you for watching. Please consider leaving a like, comment, or subscribing for more content. Feel free to check out my previous video essay or my covers from this album.